as you know, I mean, it's been a wonderful journey, and you and I have, to use an old kind of farmer's term, we plowed a lot of the same dirt over the
Yeah.
last at least 10 years anyway. And I don't like to lose. I don't like to lose. You know, even the day when we get, we don't get a bid, it just kind of, you know, it gives me that,
It
that
bothers you.
losing. Yeah, it
Yeah.
bothers me. It bothers me.
The most important skill in life is to make decisions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you make decisions all day, every day, right?
Yeah.
Little do you realize that you're actually making decisions. And that is such an important aspect of life, career.
With this political environment, I better be careful what I say, but I think that there's two things. If I was governor of Texas, I think if my Texas history and government tells me the governor can only do certain things. He can veto and call special session. That's really all that a governor can do.
It's true.
Disclaimer, the views are the guests alone, not those of the host or sponsors.
Welcome to a new episode of From Boots to Boardroom. I'm your host, Hari Vasudevan, founder and CEO of KYRO AI. Previously, I was the founder and CEO of Think Power Solutions. Not every leader sits in a corner office. From Boots to Boardroom shares the journeys of those who power America. From the job site to the boardroom, leading with grit, tenacity, empathy, and vision. Hope you will find the show to be educational, entertaining, eye-opening, most importantly, entrepreneurial. Presenting sponsor for the show is KYRO AI. Digitize work and maximize profits. For more information, visit KYRO.ai. Today, I've got a special guest, my friend, Brian McFarlin. Brian is in the 40th year of his career in the electric utility industry. He worked in leadership positions in Oncor for 22 years. Prior to that, he worked for management consulting firms serving more than 20 of North America's largest electric utilities, where he mainly focused on strategies for sourcing and managing construction and professional services. In his current role as president of Utility Engineering, a full services engineering and related services firm serving the utility industry, he is looking to change the industry again, right? Brian holds a mechanical engineering degree from Texas A&M University. He's a proud Aggie and is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Texas. Brian McFarlin, my friend, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Hari, and I'm very humbled and honored to be here. Man, this is exciting. I appreciate those kind words. And
Yes.
yes, so
Honestly, it's great to have you on the show. You know, I want the listeners to know one thing, that is, you played a very uniquely special role in my career, and we'll get to that, right? You were instrumental in Think Power Solutions getting a contract. I was knocking on the doors of Oncor for many years after I'd left my previous employer,
yeah,
Kleinfelder. And I had started the company, and we were serving other utilities, but I wanted to make sure I was at Oncor,
yeah.
and knocking on the doors. And you were about to leave Oncor. I'm pretty sure you had already decided where you were going to go, but you were still so kind enough to set up such a pivotal meeting, honestly, right? Between, if you remember, Todd Whitley, Colin Martin, Todd Rosenberger, you and I, where we brought in pizzas and brought everybody together. That ultimately was the meeting that, put us over the hump. You got into the Encore system, and the rest is history. So before we even get started to your story, I really want to know. And then we competed for the next 10 years, right? That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
You knew I was a competent guy and I was competitive. We were going to compete, but you still did what you did. Why'd you do that?
You and I have not talked about this much, And, we'll probably get into this later through the day. I've been a part of startups. This is my fourth either startup or build out of a company that I've done where I'm at now. And I have a very, very uh, soft heart for entrepreneurs. One, because I do believe they drive the innovation in America. That it's an entrepreneur that has an idea that wants to shape or reshape or build something that may not be there. And I before the time you and I got together, I had been there with a startup and realized the difficulty for a small entrepreneur to break into the big business. And lots of times what I saw happening were the big corporations would just sit back and watch the entrepreneur, and they'd kind of throw shade on them and cast doubt with clients, and till they run out of money, then they started up, right? And so when I saw you, I knew that you were working hard. You brought your construction management kind of process, your software you've been building out, and I said, he just needs a helping hand. All it is, and to get a start. So, but I had laughed about that too, because down the road and I don't call it competing, Hari. I don't think I really call my competitors in the field competitors. I call them industry peers, because I will team up with anybody if it makes sense, right? And so I kind of laughed about it. I said, you know, later on when I was trying to grow within some of our common clients, I said, and I got Hari this start, man. Now I got to compete against him. But no, it's, as you know, I mean, it's been a wonderful journey, and you and I have, to use an old kind of farmer's term, we plowed a lot of the same dirt over the
Yeah.
last at least 10 years anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, I was happy. It's just seeing an entrepreneur wanting to bring something different to the table and being met with the opposition of some people not wanting to change, right? Not wanting
We've
to move
always done
forward.
it this way, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, and no, I wanted to let you know, I've told this to you privately. I just want to make
yeah,
it so public, right, on the
yeah.
record. I deeply, deeply appreciate what you did. The pivotal moment in Think Power was when you got us onto the Encore system, and we continued to have a great relationship. And here we are talking about it. So,
Yeah.
so that's a great segue into what I wanted to be the first question, if you will, right? Which
Okay.
is, uh, what experiences shaped your leadership style, right? Both professionally as well as personally, right? Because we all bring that experiences, personal experiences, professional experiences into what we do today, who we are today, right? You're a very competitive guy, but you're also very relationship driven, right?
Hmm.
What has shaped you? What shaped what shaped who Brian McFarlin is today, and what you give the industry today?
Yeah. I mean, um, first of all, I think everybody has their own style, right? I mean, and their style works for them. So I don't believe there's one style that is better than the other. And you're correct. I have learned over the years that and I'm relationship driven around that, uh, and I am competitive. A lot of people don't recognize, because my personality seems to be probably a little laid back. I use the analogy. I said, but don't let that fool you. It's kind of like the duck on the pond. You're just floating there peacefully, but their little legs are just paddling away. And I don't like to lose. I don't like to lose. Even the day when we get, we don't get a bid, it just kind of, you know, it gives me
It
that
bothers you.
losing. Yeah, it
Yeah.
bothers me. It bothers me. So that is part of it. But I think, it goes back to, just all the influences through your life of of where you grew up and what you did, but I grew up in a small town in East Texas, in the oil belt of East Texas, where very blue collar, very, hardworking people, where everybody kind of knows your name type and you know them. And um, so I grew up in also a large family, 6 kids. So some competitiveness there. And um, I think I learned a lot about relationships, like in the small town. You know everybody, and I love to listen. I love to people watch, and I love to observe, and maybe not talk as much in some situations, but just to learn and to build those relationships. Um, you said, a 40-year career, a little bit further in depth of that was my dad also was in industry. So
Huh. I did not
so
know that.
I'm a second generation. So I have been in this industry ever since the day I was born.
Really?
It's fed and clothed me and put a roof over my head, whether it's as a child to my parents or here. So yeah, I got a long history of this industry. But as
If I may ask, where did your dad work? What did you do?
he worked at
What did he
the
do?
predecessor to Oncor at one of the operating companies back then, Dallas Power Light. He was there for
Really?
42 years, started in probably, I guess, 1950. So
Huh.
there was a point before I left Oncor that a McFarlin had been there nearly for 75 years total, you know.
Wow.
And so I overlapped with my dad before he retired. So
I did
and
not know that. That's good to
yeah,
know, actually. That's
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of where I got a lot. Also, some of the executive relationships that kind of bled down through there as well. But no, so I grew up in a small town, and actually, I live in that small town still. And
Yeah.
and my kids were able to go to school and be taught and administered by a lot of my classmates. So it's kind of a small world for my kids. But as I went on to college and got my degree, um, I'm not sure where I really started developing a leadership style. I think it's just inherent to me, wanting to build relationships. Something I learned later on during kind of leadership training, and I didn't really realize it, but as I look back, I was rated very high on developing win-win solutions. As I thought about it, that's really I've always seek to understand, right? Whether it's a peer, whether it's a client, or whether it's someone who works for me, to seek to understand their perspective and not always believe that there's only one right way to do something. And so you know, what shaped, I guess, just the events of my life and just, learning to finesse. I learned to finesse, and lead people to answers rather than me dictating answers. And so uh, letting employees uh, feel comfortable and confident that they can make decisions that I support. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anyway, yeah,
No, it's fantastic. So obviously you grew up in West Texas, or East
yeah,
Texas rather.
yeah,
One of 6 kids. Dad
yeah.
worked in DP&L. I just took some notes here. Known to develop win-win relationships, and I can attest to that. And key thing I would really want some of our listeners to take away is always learn to also understand the other person's perspective, because
Yeah,
there may be a reason to why they are doing what they're doing. That's great segue
yeah,
into into your broader career, right? So, you've been at it for 40 years. Obviously,
yeah,
you're doing what you're doing right now, right? But you were on course for 22 years, where we met. You also had that management consulting career. Can you kind of briefly, let our listeners know what are some of the key aspects of lessons you learned in your management consulting career that you applied at Oncor, and then what you learned from both of those two. Now you're applying at United, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, there's one thing that I walked away from doing management consulting. As you know, Ari, that you were at Kleinfelder. When you go into a client's operation and you're charged with looking at different things and coming up with solutions. I don't think that I ever walked into a client and brought a solution that they hadn't thought of before. And so I had developed, and I use this today with my staff, is the road to success and greatness is littered all along the way with great strategy that just doesn't get implemented. It's about implementation. It's about getting it across the finish line.
100%. It's about execution,
Yeah.
honestly, right? Everybody has great ideas, but very few people actually have the discipline, perseverance to deal with adversity that eventually comes with executing that strategy and
Oh,
see it through completion at the end of the day,
it is.
right? So,
Sometimes you just got to drag it. I'm talking about drag it across the finish line. You know, it's in a big corporation, it is easy to stop and just let it sit there, you know. And I think that's some of the frustration entrepreneurials, they don't necessarily fit in the large and corporate environments because we're thinkers. We're wanting to change. We're wanting to do something, and you're met with so much resistance and friction that you
yeah.
just say, "Can I do it?"
100%. We don't
Yeah.
want meetings. We want
No.
we don't want meetings for the sake of meetings. We
Yeah.
want action driven, meetings at the end of
Yeah.
the day. We are task force driven as opposed to committee driven, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, so I think 100% you're hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah. So I mean that was a big takeaway. And the other one is just, having confidence in your thoughts and strategy that it'll work. I tell people, and Hari, you can maybe I'd interested in your perspective too. As I've gotten older, I've kind of reflect on things, all through school, whether it's elementary, junior high school, college, we're tested and we're tested on answers, right? What is the answer? Then you get on this side, there are no answers. It's just decisions, right? You have to make decisions.
Right.
And
You're
I
right.
think that's the other thing is make the decision.
Yeah.
And I will tell you personally, for me, I tend to labor on those a while. And so I tell my staff, my leadership team, if you see me laboring on that decision, kick me, push me forward, tell me, make it happen.
Interesting. I'll tell you what, because it is so interesting you say that. You know what I teach my kids all the time, right? It's
What's
like I
that?
tell my kids, at least, hopefully I'm teaching them, is the most important skill in life is to make decisions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because you make decisions all day, every day, right?
Yeah.
Little do you realize that you're actually making decisions. And that is such an important aspect of life, career, and whatnot. You're right about it. And honestly, from an entrepreneurial perspective, what you're doing right now with utility engineering and what I've loved in my entrepreneurial career is like you can make decisions,
Yeah.
right? You make decisions whether it's right or wrong. You make the decisions, see the fruits of that decision bear out, or you face the consequences of it, and then you tweak it next time and
Yeah.
make a better decision because hopefully as you get older and whatnot, you're more mature and you're making better decisions. And that's one of the things I love about sports, right? Hey, you draft a player, you make a mistake,
Yeah.
you cut him, or move on, you draft the next player and whatnot. I mean, we'll get into sports a little later. Rams, for example.
Yeah.
I love Sean McVay and the aggressive decision making that they do. It's like, hey, you know what? Let's go. We have Jared Goff, good quarterback.
Yeah.
Trade him, get Matthew Stafford, right? Make a better
Yeah.
decision right now, right? So and
Yeah.
they got the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
So Uh,
So I think it's very interesting, Hari, that you're teaching your kids that. One of the things of my goals with my children was the same thing, was to lead them and teach them to make good decisions, you know, and and it is difficult because you do make bad ones, wrong ones. I don't know if they're bad, but you'll make wrong ones at times, and you can't you know, and they sometimes those decisions affect people's lives, you know, and their livelihood, and that's the weight that we bear, right, as we do that, and so but I think it's very wise to begin to teach your kids how to make those decisions, and that you'll make decisions that not necessarily the ones that are fruitful, right?
yes,
And but you learn,
yes,
and but the thing I always rest on, I'm not an armchair quarterback that goes back and say I wish I woulda coulda. I stand by with I made the best decision with what I knew at the time, you know?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so then I just move on. So,
It's interesting for an ex-management consultant to say that, but of course, you're now an entrepreneur running
yeah,
utility engineering. But management consultants, what do CEOs do? They want to cover their decisions with a report from a management consultant. You
yeah,
go to a Bain or whoever and
yeah,
say, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think?" And the management consultant comes back and say, "You're right, Mr. CEO or Madam
yeah,
CEO. This is what you should be doing." And then the CEO makes the decision, presents it to the board. The decision doesn't go well. You
yeah.
guess what they do? The management consultant said it's gonna be all right.
Well, I tell you, one of I think the reasons I related well in the utility space, because I did management consulting in the utility space, is because I was not the classically trained consultant. I didn't have the consultantese. I didn't have that. I kind of spoke just plainly. And, one of the things going back, kind of laughing a little bit, I can't tell you, when these presentations and stuff, we generally as consultants would develop the presentations and the material working with whatever level of management it was, and they would present to the C-suite or whatever, and I always coached them. I always coached them. You've seen people present and they're getting up there and presenting, and they get a tough question, right? And then they'll start backpedaling and casting doubt. And I said, never, ever go backwards on what's on that slide. You know, if you get in a bind, you look over at me and I will help you out, but never go backwards, because you start showing a crack of doubt, it's done.
You're right. Especially in a boardroom meeting,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
I mean, you
y-
cannot do that, right? So
yes, no, I agree. I agree with you on that. So, no, it's a really interesting way your careers can evolve, right? And
yeah,
I say this to you all the time, man. One of the most energetic, inspirational entrepreneurs is Brian McFarlin.
yeah,
You're hustling 40 years into your career. You've worked almost as well. I mean, I could be young enough to be your kid, honestly, right? And you're kind of absolutely hustling it. I deeply appreciate that. So, uh,
well, I will tell you that yeah, I'm not ready to hang it up yet, but I can tell you that I can feel the energy kind of a little bit less, but the mental capacity and the desire to continue to drive change. One thing about me, Harry, I cannot stand status quo. I just can't stay. I cannot tolerate things just staying the way they are. We always ought to be moving things forward.
yeah.
And sometimes in my entrepreneurial mind, I may be moving forward too fast. You gotta have either your stakeholders or your clients, you gotta bring them along with you, and that's
Yes.
another thing I learned from the management consulting was where you end up in whatever your strategy is really depends on where you're starting. You know, you can't take someone who is on the lower end of the spectrum of sophistication and automation and all of a sudden put them way up here. They just can't grasp that. So you kind of have to move them up the curve to where you
Yeah.
think they can, you know. And it's the same thing. It's the
I
same
know
thing.
all about it.
Yeah.
Yes. No,
When you
it's
came out,
interesting.
when you came out in 2009, that I think that's what you did. You kind of went boom. You were talking about your software and how we need to be, and the stakeholders were on. What we've been doing it this way, right?
Yeah, yeah, no,
A
for
man,
100
a
years.
man in a man in a truck and an old cell phone. That's all I need, right?
No, it's so funny you say that. And, it's like they were more concerned about reliability, which is obviously important, right? I mean, we'll
Yeah.
get to that. The industry is all about reliability and whatnot, right? So, but before we get to some of the technical aspects of our business, since you talk about your career and how it's evolved, obviously you're energized to a large extent because our industry is going through monumental change, right? Honestly, I mean,
Okay.
I was just reading a EI report the other day, and I believe we've spent $1.4 trillion since 2014. I believe about $180 billion just in the last year alone, 2024. We're about on track to invest about $1.9 trillion for the next 4 5 years through 2029, if I remember right. So uh, I mean, AI is driving a monumental change through the industry because of data centers built out, the need for energy, need for power, and things like that. But we're still struggling to attract young kids into the business, right? Into the engineering, construction,
Hmm.
utility business. There's definitely shortage of skilled labor there. Um, what would you tell a 20-year-old kid looking at his or her career options? What would you tell that person? Hey, you know what? Come, be part of this monumental change in the utility industry. How would you attract somebody to the industry?
Well, good question because I've long talked to engineers about this industry. I said, if you're an engineer and you enjoy engineering, there's no better industry to jump into because it generally supports all disciplines from electrical to mechanical to civil to nuclear to probably chemical. You and I talk a lot. We talk in the confines of the kind of the wire side of the business, but really when you get over into the generation and what like TXU used to have, the mining operations, you had this unbelievable ability to just use whatever discipline that you wanted to pursue. I think on top of that, uh, it's also an industry that supports, um, you know, individuals who are more vocational as compared to not wanting to go to college, or if you want to go to a technical college, it's supported. So there's for
And
any
still make a good living. Honestly, it
and
still
good
make a good
living,
living. I interviewed.
good living.
I mean, I've known Daryl Hallmark, who you know very well.
Yeah,
I had him on the show, and how somebody with a GED uh, has made some phenomenal living, right? I mean,
yeah,
honestly, a
yeah,
phenomenal living, right? So you're right. This is an industry that supports college educated, those who go to trade school, and whatnot, as long as you're willing to work hard and
yeah,
honestly be entrepreneurial too, because it supports a lot of small businesses.
yeah. So I mean, I think that you know, making them a lot of individuals are not aware of this industry. You know, we'll talk more in a minute about the details of it, but they basically flip the light on and they know the electricity comes on. They don't understand all that's behind that. And so exposing them to it is one thing. I think now you get into where we're headed now, you know, with you know, distribution automation and different things like that, but also the services that are becoming available to our that like we're providing that through large scale data collection through different techniques, lidar, photo imaging, photogrammetry, then taking that and moving that in through AI engines and things like it. It's just for analysis, it's incredible to where we're at and where we're headed.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of, we're utilities are conservative. We're conservative in this industry, but I think we gotta get a little more energetic with those guys, the kids, and talk about what's out there.
but what's exciting could happen. Honestly,
Yeah,
it's interesting you say lidar, AI, all these things because I literally today is what it is. Today's date is September 16th. Whenever this gets posted, but September 16th, I just released an article on Yahoo Tech and Power magazine about that exact topic, how it
yeah,
can help the utility industry uh, make their vegetation management more efficient and hence reduce wildfires, outages related to that, and things like that. No, you're right. There's a lot of things to do in this space and a lot of money to do that as well. So let's kind of get into some of the things you're passionate about, you're doing right now at utility engineering, which is, we talked about the dollars that the industry has poured in, right? But I'm looking at my data here. Reliability is barely budged, right?
yeah,
The average American still loses 6 hours of power in a year. Granted that does include, storm-related outages and things like that. Your SAIDI values are kind of still meandering in the same range. About SAIDI is about 6 hours. SAFE is, I believe, it's about 2 times, right?
yeah,
uh, in obviously AI is driving a lot of data center build outs. I mean, the other day there was news about how OpenAI has contracted the Oracle for $300 billion in data center build outs. Just
yeah,
think through that, right?
yeah.
Um, where are we going as an industry? I mean, there's also a lot of these fundamental pushes and pulls in the industry, right? So you see Ohio ratepayers are having to pony up $27 a month to support data centers in their area. Same thing is happening in Virginia. Georgia, for example, has now the regulators have said, hey, if you're a data center, your cost is not going to be passed on to the residential consumer, right? Which is, there's a lot of these discussions and debates happening in the industry. Where do you see the industry evolving in the next 5, 10
Well,
years?
I think this would be a good discussion if you had our good friend Jim Greer on here, to kind of throw in that discussion as well. But, you know, I think it's a very good question. When you look at these data centers, and if I'm not mistaken, one of the world's largest is being built in Ruston, Louisiana area, which will consume as much energy as a what would have been a large power plant, you know. So you know, I think you have that huge demand, and I think you have this demand for resiliency, and you have this and but if I go to I meant to do it before I got here this morning, but I apologize. I meant to go to powertochoose.org and just look at what are retail prices doing right now. And I know the last time my wife and I redid our deal, I mean, it was hard to get below 17 cents a kilowatt hour, you know? And so I'm surprised that customers are I'm not hearing much about the cost of it, but fundamentally, economically, for not just Texas or the rest of the country, we need to have low cost power, right? So how do you fit all that into that equation, right?
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, honestly, Brian, as you keep going, 1 in 4 Americans today can't afford power, right? I
yeah,
mean, we're all super fortunate. We don't even think about our power bills. I was asking one of my buddies, hey, do you know how much you're paying for power? He's like, nah, I put it on autopilot or auto pay
yeah,
rather, right?
yeah,
Which is, I don't do that. I kind of
yeah,
know what I'm paying every month, right?
yeah,
Because I'm fiscally conservative. I kind of believe in
yeah,
that. Hey, you got to know what you pay and things like that,
yeah,
right? So, some of our friends don't even know what they pay, and that goes back to your point about power to choose. You can at least get a feel for it.
yeah,
I don't have the power to choose because I'm on a co-op, co-serve. They're great.
yeah.
So keep going on that front. I just want to kind of interject there.
Yeah. So I was up in one of our clients up in kind of the Montana area, and it's a co-op, and they were talking about they were having to do a rate change, and it's like moving from 8.3 to 8.5 cents. I'm going like, and I said, I'd love to have that. They were concerned about the repercussions, but I think my concern, obviously, yes, it's interesting. That's really I've talked about. uh, Jim Greer, I'd be curious what his perspective would be on this Sadie Safety, really not non-storm event Sadie Safety not moving with all the dollars being interjected in here. I think some of it is maybe it hadn't had time. You know, when you aggregate the whole U.S. market into this, I'm sure it normalizes those numbers, right? So,
Yeah,
um,
No, you're right. I mean, to be fair,
yeah,
there are states with much higher, um, or rather, much lower reliability indices. Like, for
yeah,
example, Louisiana, right,
yeah,
has a lower reliability index, and some states have a better reliability index, right? So it
yeah,
also probably correlates to some of these storm-related issues and things like that. But it also goes back to investments. How do you invest? How
yeah,
efficient are you in investing? How do you manage your storm? Because
yeah,
um, our good friends at Centerpoint, they've come up with AI driven systems after the recent issues there, where they're able to predict with mid 80% accuracy, 85% accuracy, which fuse is going to fail if a storm is going to hit in pre-positioned wedge management crews, pre-positioned storm crews, so that they're able to trim those,
yeah.
trees in that area, so that the damage is going to be mitigated or less severe than what could be. So that's the direction the industry is moving, if you will, right? So, but we're back to you.
Yeah. So I mean, as you move forward through this, this investment, I don't know how much of the investment's really been implemented yet. I know a lot of our clients have these huge SRP programs and huge investments that they're just kind of in year one of implementation, trying to get that done. The other thing I wonder also, with automated metering coming in, probably if when the 2000, 5, 6, 7 to 2013, now we got more data to collect. It's more accurate data on the outages. Um, but also, I'm curious to how we have much denser populations now. You take the Dallas Fort Worth now compared to Dallas Fort Worth when I got started, but even 20 years ago, or around the southeast coast. So when we had these huge weather events, I mean, it doesn't take much if a storm comes through Dallas Fort Worth to knock 2 or 300,000 people out, right, or more,
Yeah.
right? So, and when you have these dense populations that we didn't have 30 years ago, I'm curious of that impact on that as well. So, but from a obviously reliability in customers' minds is very important. You know, that's important, and there's a huge investment in that. My biggest concern is about the generation manufacturing of electrons. Okay. Um, most people do not sit down and think about this. They don't even think about the the supply chain of electrons or the generation of electricity is a unique supply chain that the amount being made has to equal the amount being used at any given instance. So there's no inventory in that system, right? So with, there's not been a lot of power generation being developed other than the renewables. And with the big beautiful bill coming in, the kind of the backing and support of the renewables is going to go away and phase out. So with, like I said earlier, with these data centers coming in a data center basically is load equaling what was an old original steam electric station of 1,000 to 1,500 megawatts. Where is this generation coming from? We can build wires. We
Big
could build
time problem.
we can build wires and we can build substations. But when that frequency starts hitting about 59.7, everybody starts getting really worried, right? When
But
you're in short supply.
That's wires nowhere too, honestly. But that's a very important point you're bringing, because here's the deal. Uh, if I have my data right, and I could be wrong here, Ohio, it took the peak load is about 9 gigawatts, if I remember right.
Mhm.
And it took them 100 years to get there, right?
Yeah,
Uh, they're going to go to 18 gigawatts peak in
yeah,
the next 7 years. Because that area is big into data centers, if you will, right? I
yeah,
mean, hence or previous conversation about the residents in Ohio and whatnot facing that increased electricity bill, right? 20, 25, $26 a
yeah,
month, if you will, right? So, uh, where's the generation capacity going to come from, right?
yeah,
It's a huge piece of the puzzle, and hence you see all these tech giants, restarting old nuclear reactors and
yeah,
extending the life of these nuclear reactors, because you need power at the end of the day,
yeah.
right? So,
Yeah,
yeah,
so one of our, utility engineering is one of four operating companies of Utility Innovation Group, and one of the other operating companies is focused in that specific area, the microgrid and distributed energy of these large and concentrated load centers, i.e., data centers. So that's where they're working right now, and
wow.
making headway of how do you how do you provide power to these large facilities, right? So
Without
I
having to rely on the grid, kind of,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So I'm just concerned overall, how close, you know, winter storm, um, the 2020 winter storm, I forget the name of it.
Yuri,
Yuri.
Yuri,
Yeah, Yuri.
yeah,
I mean, that was a different kind of event, but it highlighted the issue of when the ERCOT or the operating grid starts losing stability. Now it was because of the event, but what if that's short supply? You know,
yeah.
I I w-
We came very close to a blackout, right?
yeah,
Very, very close to a blackout during that incident
yeah,
there. So,
yeah. So I was actually I was doing consulting for First Energy when they had that blackout up in the Northeast. Back in about 2003, maybe something like
yeah,
that. I remember. And I remember I couldn't get out of the parking garage, uh, because the arm wouldn't raise, and fortunately, it took like 3 plus days to
yeah.
bring that grid back up, and
So
and
what you do? You stayed in the same parking lot and did not
yeah,
get.
I don't know, finally got out and I got home. Fortunately, my home where I lived there in Ohio, I was actually living in Ohio at the time. Um, it was on AEP system, so it was not down. So it just a little bit of finger come up there. So my home was not, but it was a pretty significant event. But you just think about
Yeah,
that happening in Texas or any other grid. It is because of short supply. I mean, like I said, when I don't know the exact frequency that relays start to open, but it's not very far off of
yeah,
60,
yes.
60
Listen,
cycles.
neither of us know much about relays, because
Yeah,
you're a mechanical, I'm a civil.
I
Let's
know it.
stick to that, right? Stick to that. So,
But yeah,
no, honestly, on the aspect of electricity and outages and things like that, what people don't realize is your cell phones stop working after a period of
yes,
time, because the cell phone towers only have so much backup
yeah,
built in. And if there's a widespread outage, your communication systems start breaking down. And, many people, I'm young enough that I've never had a landline on my own. Of course, my parents'
mhm,
house had a landline, but
yeah.
I've never had a landline, right? So you rely on your cell phones, which, if it stops working, there's a big problem there.
Oh
Which,
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
people this day and age are they've not been through those events where there's no communication. I mean, it'd be somewhat catastrophic to them. They don't. We're kind of a just in time supply chain um, society. From groceries to everything, so it would be difficult.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because our short attention span, we kind of look at our phones all the time and whatnot. So that's
Yeah.
so let's kind of, I know we talked about it quite a bit, but let's kind of have a focused discussion on this, right? AI all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I remember you and I having a discussion not too long ago saying, hey, you asked ChatGPT to write a poem for your beautiful wife's 60th birthday, Judy, if I
Yeah.
remember right,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it did write a poem. So, hopefully you
Yeah.
didn't give that poem to Judy there. But
No.
my question is, what is the impact of AI going to be in the utility industry for a guy who's uh, been through lots of changes in the last 40 years? I believe you're probably saying that this is the most significant event or change that the industry is seeing. What do you see?
Yeah. I don't know that my mind can comprehend completely what is going to change. I mean, because AI has a very this broad capabilities all the way from working in the finance and accounting to the engineering and all the way down in the field. So um the I think it's going to be sweeping, and I think we're just on the front end of it, where you know, I used to think, AI, that's a firm out here that they're going to do some. No, actually, we're bringing AI in here, and we're going to have AI if we're going to stay up with what we're doing. We got to have it, and I think you're going to see the utilities already move in that direction as well. So, I mean, but I think from a generalized sense on kind of the operating and I think the the utilities grids are so large that they're reactive to certain things, right? They're reactive to an outage and things like that. Yeah, they are proactive, but I think with AI and the way we can gather data now and have AI analyze it, um, I think that's what I think you're going to see change. I mean, we are working on, and I can't speak too deep into it because we're still working through the patent process on things, but the ability to take large amounts of data and just whether it's photographs, whether it's lidar, or what, and have it analyzed is going to be offer our clients a tremendous amount. Whether it's regarding veg
Yeah,
management, whether it's a broken crossarm brace, whether it's whatever, right?
yeah,
But I think
fantastic.
from my side, and I don't know, I think about design, how I don't know yet how you connect the dots. How is AI going to design a substation? I think there's going to
Yeah.
be elements that it can build out. Standard uh, designs, or just. But I don't know. I think it's coming though. Don't do you? What's your thoughts?
I think for the most part, I think it can definitely make uh make the preliminary designs and things like that, and then the engineer comes in to kind of fine tune it, right? I think the day is not too far out.
Yeah,
Probably somebody's already doing it as we speak, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
um so let's get into the final piece of the discussion here, which is from your career. I mean, obviously, relationships has defined your career,
yeah.
entrepreneurship, uh, learning the lessons from different aspects of your where you worked into the next job and things like that. What has been a failure that you can share, lessons learned from that, and what can young people who listen to the show learn from Brian McFarlin's failure that they don't have to make themselves?
Um, hmm, that's a good one. I think not to let disappointment keep you down, right? I go back in my career, um, like I said, I spent 8 years, nearly 10 years, I think, in the management consulting, managing at consulting at different levels, and really was, I hate to say it, I was a supply chain expert, right? And I focused on really more on the strategy and management of all the outsourced contracting, right, that goes on, whether it's professional services or whatever. So, at one point I transitioned, and I was not selected for a leadership position with that expertise, and it was very disheartening. It was probably the one of the toughest blows that I had to my professional career. And so, but it made me start thinking, and the and I went on for several years, but it made me start thinking about how do I use what I have, my knowledge, and that's what kind of moved me to this side of the fence, and to say, well, let's take what you know. I think anybody that worked with me previously when I was in supply chain as a contractor service provider, I think they respected me because I understood their side of the business, and I understood what was driving them. So I think that took me over to this side and to a whole nother career path, and it's been one of the most rewarding career paths. So um I just say, don't you got to be tough. You got to take some things on the chin and get up and keep going.
Be resilient. Be
You gotta be
resilient.
resilient, and
Yeah.
and there are factors outside of your control that decisions are made, and you just go on.
Yeah.
And
No,
I,
fair
I
enough.
would tell you that I have no animosity. I have no hurt feelings. It is what it was, and just move on. So um, I don't know if that's a failure. Um, I was trying to think through.
No,
Um,
I think that's a really good one, honestly.
yeah,
It's like, hey, decisions are made, and for whatever reason, you don't control that. You don't control what we control in life is a very, very small subset of what we think we control, right?
yeah,
So control the
exactly.
controllables, leave the uncontrollables out. Uh, if you don't like certain decisions, certain ways things are going, be resilient, move on, find something else to do,
Yeah,
and still be super successful, like what you've shown,
yeah.
right?
So
So
yeah, yeah. I mean, failure. I mean, I will say this, and I think um, you cannot be afraid to fail. You cannot be afraid to get a black eye, because it goes back to that decision making. If you have that fear, then you're going to be very, very slow, and you will not make a decision till you have everything lined out. You know.
100%. Listen, people don't realize it, right? I've been fired 3 times. I've only had 5 jobs. So, it's alright. Yeah, I've been alright. So so,
Yeah.
uh, anyway, that's good. So let's kinda segue into some fun questions, rapid fire questions, right?
Okay. Do
Uh,
I get to ask them back too? You know.
yeah, go for it, man. Nobody has done that, but I'd love that.
Yeah.
So, pro sports, college sports, what do you like?
College probably. I've kind of bailed out of the pro arena. I'm not as big into it as I was, but yeah,
Yeah. So, college sports, is it, like football,
mainly
basketball? What do you,
mainly
baseball?
football. Mainly football. I follow
Oh,
it pretty good.
yeah, it's a good week for you, right? Because
Yeah.
I think the Aggies beat, who'd you guys beat? Notre Dame? So,
Notre Dame. I was really proud of how they looked. Really
got it.
was.
Got it.
We're
Got it.
good.
That's good. Awesome. Awesome. So, what do you think is going to happen this year in the SEC? Prediction. Who's gonna,
I think I kind of hate to say this, but I think Georgia still looks Georgia's Georgia. Haven't. I kind of got mixed emotions on LSU. I think A&M has a. I need A&M's kind of got to step up and be consistent. I think Texas, Archie Manning, by the way, which I'm still behind Archie Manning. Oh, by the way, I am a college football fan, so I don't focus a lot on one team. So I like to see the best, but I feel sorry for Archie. He had so much pressure put on him, and he's just a kid. So let
Yeah.
him develop and let him grow. But I think Georgia. I think Georgia probably is the one. But
Yeah. So talk about Arch Manning. I know he had a rough outing this past Sunday. He had a rough
yeah,
outing in Ohio. Um, I think he had a good week, a second week in San Jose State. So, what's your prediction? Do you think he's gonna be successful, be a first round pick in the NFL, or do you think he's gonna be a bust?
no, I don't think he's a bust. I remember Colt McCoy's sophomore year. Colt McCoy was one of for a long time the winningest college football quarterback. Colt McCoy's sophomore year didn't look much different. So I I just think that you had the media gets out over their skis, and he'll be fine. He just needs to get a good win under his belt.
Some of these guys are a little jealous that he's making a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
so, so, all right. So, my friend, you've just been elected as the governor of the state of Texas. Congratulations,
Oh, thank you,
uh,
thank you.
Governor McFarlin. So, what are you gonna do? What is one thing you're gonna do?
Well, you know, with this political environment, I better be careful what I say. But I think that there's two things. If I was governor of Texas, I think if my Texas history and government tells me the governor can only do certain things. He can veto and call special session. That's really all the governor can do.
It's true.
So I would call special session, and I'd be having
Again,
I'd be special
again.
sessions until and to focus on power generation and the um, taxes, homeowners, homeowners tax.
What will you do to the homeowners tax?
Problem is the way it is right now is that people are getting taxed out of their homes even though they have them paid for. You just can't afford them anymore. The system was probably okay when the cost of housing was pretty consistent, but when you've had what you had the last 10 years like this, and appraisal value's gone up, you take people, say my age or a little bit older, that maybe have a house paid for, but their income is kind of fixed, and all of a sudden they can't even afford to live in the house that they paid for, right? So
Yeah.
I think, you know, I hate to say this, and it will never happen in Texas, but I'm not so much against an income tax, uh, if that's what it took. So I don't know, but I think they have to do something. They need to do it. I think they need to do it in the next uh, session or two.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One thing I know for a fact is Brian McFarland's household is not on fixed income. So you guys
No.
okay.
Hey.
And
Yeah,
you're
but
gonna
I'm thinking in the future, and I'm thinking for my friends and people that are. So,
yes,
yeah,
fair enough on that. Listen, it's been a pleasure hosting you. It's been
yeah,
a pleasure knowing you, honestly, right? You've been a
yeah.
great friend, a great advocate, a great industry peer, and somebody who knows inspirational to a lot of entrepreneurs. So, uh, I mean, I'm sure you're going to be around a lot longer, and we're going to have many more of these discussions, offline, online. Thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend.
Oh, man, I've enjoyed it. This has been very pleasurable. I didn't recognize the time, and we could go on probably another hour or two, but I'm not sure
Easy.
people want to listen to it. But they,
Hey,
but I just,
you'd be surprised. People listen to 3-4 hour podcast shows.
yeah. Well, Harry, let me also say you've been um, a great friend, and even yeah, you're right. We did compete, but I never saw it that way. Uh, Now and I'm very impressed with what you've done and being an industry leader. That's what I mean. trying to drive change and lead change in the industry is not easy in this big old industry, you know. And so I applaud you for that, and I'm excited. I really am. I'm gonna, I listened to yours with Daryl Hallmark, and I've known Daryl for a long time, and he did a great job and a great story. So, man, I just applaud you and thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Man, it's been a pleasure. Fun knowing you. Let's get together for lunch one of these days. And until then, stay safe, my friend.
Oh, you bet. Hey, buddy. See you later.
See you later.
All right.
Coming up next on From Boots to Boardroom.
If you really look at what the your foreman's position, in my opinion, is the most valuable position that you've got on your crews, because that is your first line of defense if they're going to let somebody do something stupid or not.
In the next episode, From Boots to Boardroom, we sit down with Rick Garland, a longtime lineman with IBEW Local 66 out of Pasadena, Texas, who has been in the trade since the late 1970s. Rick shares what it really means to live the lineman life, the brotherhood, the toll, and the pride, along with powerful lessons on safety, mentoring the next generation, and how AI and new demand are changing the line trade. Stay tuned.